I'm going to go ahead and do what, well, I've been wanting to talk about this game for a while. Dispatch, let's get to the review and my thoughts on it. So this was an interesting one because I originally wasn't sure if I was gonna cover it, but ultimately, based on the concept of it, I decided to give it a go. But for me, because it was episodic, I figured and because it wasn't a long episodic one, where essentially each episode was only about 45 minutes to an hour long, it made sense for me to just wait, because instead of waiting like months and months and months to release less episodes, they released 2 episodes over the course of 4 weeks. So basically you had the full game unlocked in a month's time from the release of the first episode. So I think that's a much better way of doing it than how Telltale would used to do it, where you'd get like 1 episode every 2 or 3 months or whatever the case would be. So this way it kept people's interest, and I feel like we were more involved in it with that way. So such an interesting concept of a game. It takes the whole narrative storytelling and combines strategy elements, obviously somewhat obviously the RPG elements too. So with that being said, it was an exceptionally strong game in my book. It's strong game in the sense that it had that attention to, you know what I mean? It had this unique concept enough. It was strong enough for me to like, okay, I got to give this a go. I feel like, especially considering that some of the, original writers of it used to work on Telltale projects from many years back. So some of the great ones that, we really enjoyed, before Telltale, the original Telltale, of course, before they went under. So naturally, I had to go ahead and said, you know what, let's just wait for all the episodes to come out, which today, the last 2 episodes unlocked, and I just did all 8 episodes in one stream. I figured that was the best way of tackling it, because I do long streams all the time. So anyway, let's get into some of the things that I liked about the game. So as I said, it has one of the most unique premises that I've played in a long time. I did not expect to see this interesting hybrid style gameplay. I obviously was expecting to be along for a story. I knew there was comedic elements, and obviously choice-based, many choices that'll affect the gameplay or affect outcomes and how the game will actually end as you go through it. But obviously the whole thing of where most of the gameplay was a strategy element, where day to day you send out various superheroes or villains or whatever you want to call them in this regard, and you basically have to send them on jobs, and based on their stats and their skills, you might have a higher success rate or not, and obviously depending on what kind of decisions you make to level up those characters and give them stats here and there, it all is going to make a difference. And obviously managing your time and your abilities and things like that, it is going to change things, and it's going to affect how easy or how difficult the game would be. So it was an unlikely but very welcome addition to the game, because I found myself really excited to play those moments. Obviously the game's main thing is the story, deep storytelling with the writing was a high emphasis on it. But that gameplay, I just want to mention this interesting hybridized like combination of the two was absolutely fantastic, and I did not think I would like that. I'm like, wait, this is the gameplay, and like I said, I was itching to get to it in each episode. It was one of the most entertaining aspects of the game. But one thing that's funny about it, it's not the entire point of the game. Even though it seems like you're kind of taking a turn away from the original game, you know how some games you'll see this kind of thing where it'll almost throw in something to be like, now look, it's a video game, because some people will criticize interactive films, and you just make choice, you're just kind of along for the ride, and sometimes you'll get a developer who will throw in a gameplay element that doesn't really affect anything, and it's almost like, now it's a video game, see, now you can call it a game, it's not just an interactive movie. This one, like I said, it did actually do well. It felt like it was a part of it. It felt like it wasn't something just thrown in. It felt like they worked with both aspects of the game and worked them in together, so they would actually go hand in hand, as opposed to, like I said, just crammed in there during random sections just to make the game feel more like a game. So that's one thing I had to say, is I was quite surprised at how well the two worked out, and both were really, really nice. There was never a point where when I went into one and came out of another, or went into the other, and it didn't matter. It's not like I was like, oh no, I'm back to this or whatever. I was excited on either front, so it didn't seem to matter to me which aspect of it that it was. I feel like this was one of those things where it made sense every time, and each one was I was excited to go to, because going away from the gameplay of the strategy section, the story is probably one of the strongest stories I think I've seen in a long time. I think the writing was absolutely stellar, and I don't say that word often, but it was absolutely stellar. It was serious, it was well thought out, but it was also funny. That's a big one. Having comedy and being able to actually be funny without being overly cringy seems to be a hard thing these days. It seems like a lot of writers try too hard to appease to certain, you know, demographics, where this one is just like, you felt more like you're hanging out with your buddies. You know what I mean? It's that kind of comedy. You're just shooting the shit with each other. You're not worrying about like appeasing this group over that group. You're just hanging out and you feel comfortable and you can be yourself. And I think that's what this game showed through its writing, was the writers were being themselves and they're portraying themselves in their writing, as opposed to, oh, what would this group find funny? What would this group find funny? Or what would this group find offensive or not offensive? You could tell that that wasn't really here. It was just, let's get some good writing. Some of it might be a little childish, but it suited the game and its theme. It didn't ever feel like it didn't make sense for that moment, and it didn't actually work in the situation. I found myself never groaning at everything. I actually genuinely was entertained from start to finish with the writing and obviously the direction of both, like I said, the script, the dialogue, the, you know, the jokes here and there. They were all very, very well done, and I just was constantly enjoying the entire experience. Like I said, the upside to going back to the gameplay swaps, going to the strategy section of the game, you know, when you're sending your heroes out on dispatch, it still keeps the theme of that enjoyable, like the personas of all these characters are so interesting. Each one is unique, each one's likable in some way, and honestly, even the villains, you don't hate any of the villains because they're so well done. Does that make sense? Like, all the characters have their own personas, and like, whether, like I said, heroes or villains, they all are unique and they don't feel like a copy paste. You know, they've just got that personality to them, and it shows through in obviously the delivery of the acting and the lines, and obviously the writing as well. They work very well together, and I'm exceptionally impressed with it. It was not something that I ever thought it would go through, but you know, it's pretty remarkable. Going on top of that, obviously there is some replay value here. While I wouldn't say there's too many branches necessarily, where, like, you know, some games will literally have so many different branches, and it would, like, you know, take it for an example, take the games, you know, like the Dark Pictures anthology games. There's a lot of branches where one thing can really completely change it, and if you want to see absolutely everything, you basically have to make multiple major decisions and then do different decisions off those major decisions. Whereas this one seems a little bit more linear in the sense that there are multiple major decisions. They don't really necessarily change the story as much. I feel like there are like major decisions, maybe 4 to 5, maybe 6 major decisions that will change what kind of ending you get, but they more along follow a set script, which I think it actually makes more sense, because again, if you do too much different stuff, it takes away from, I think it can potentially take away from the initial vision that these guys had. So I think with that being said, there is replay value here. I have yet to do it a second time, obviously, but I feel like you could play the game multiple times and get a different experience each time while still following the same theme of the game and understanding a few things. Now, obviously, I personally want to know more about the story. I personally would love to see what else we have in store. I think this could be a really, really interesting franchise if they do it well, but at the same time, you don't want to overdo it as well and take it down the wrong direction. So I feel like you could just leave it here, and this is, you know, dispatch ends here. There's no more dispatch, there's no sequel or anything, but you could also do spin-offs and things like that I think would work. But it's one of those things where it needs to be, you know, it's a fine line. So it could either be improved by expanding, because I definitely would like to know more lore and expand on these characters that we see, but at the same time, it's like, should we leave well enough to alone because it's so good in its current state? You know what I mean? So like I said, absolutely fantastic. I love the design of the visuals as well. I'm not really into the anime style, and I know it's not an anime because it's not Japanese. Trust me, I know the rules, but I will say it's just, I did enjoy it. Normally I'm not someone who's into that sort of stuff, but I think it felt like you were watching like a comic book that was turned into a like you know, a live action. That's what it felt like. So it was like cartoony, but not, it looked like it was for adults. So it was interesting enough for me to like maintain that, you know what I mean? And I just loved it. It was very comic book-esque, and it does kind of play almost like parody of the entire, you know, superhero stuff we see all the time, and it doesn't take them too seriously, and it makes them feel more like real people, even if they might not be, or they're like superhuman or whatever the case would be, or they're not entirely human, it kind of humanizes these heroes. And I think that's one of the strongest things about this game. And I think it just makes it more relatable. It's like some guy happened to have all these crazy powers one day or whatever the case would be, or some don't. As our main character proved, he did not have any heroes. And that's almost Batman-like, you know what I mean? He had an inheritance. He carried it on from his father. But again, his father and Shroud and all these enemies, these villains, I feel like that is something I would very much like to see done again. You know what I mean? So again, exceptionally strong. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this game. I'm so glad I picked it up, and I'm so glad I played it. Like I said as well, great bang for buck. You can play it multiple times and feel like you're getting a different experience, because the decisions are going to change the personalities, or sorry, the decisions and things that people say or think of you as you go through. Because everyone, I feel like I said, I'm happy with this ending because I feel like I got the best ending for a hero. Everyone loved me. You know, everything went well. All the relationships were in good graces. That villain was taken care of, wasn't killed, you know, did the true hero thing. But we could also flip that and be a dick to everybody, end up killing the hero, or, you know, doing all these nasty things to people, and it could completely change the outcome. So replay value is there for a reasonable price tag as well. I believe this game sits for 30 USD. I'm not 100% sure on that. It was roughly 40 Canadian after taxes and everything. So I think it was 30 USD, and it took me almost 9 hours to complete it. And obviously with multiple runs, there's a lot to see here. And with the achievements there, not too hard to 100% based on what I've seen. It's just a matter of like picking the right choices. So and obviously doing the certain things. So there's lots of replay value. It's such a fun ride, and I highly recommend this one. So now that I've said some of the things that I enjoyed, let's talk about the things that I didn't particularly like. I gotta be honest, I'm not actually really sure what to say in this category. This game I want to say is damn near perfect, but I think there's just a couple things. I think the one thing I could say that would probably prevent this from being perfect is I could see some of the, like, you know, the aspects of the mini games, especially with the hacking. I could see that getting a bit repetitive, and I feel like it was getting a little repetitive, but it wasn't not fun to me. But I could see how some people would find that to be repetitive, and how some of these missions could potentially take away. I didn't think so, but I can see how that is actually in play. So based on that, you know, if you do have, you know, and you know, some people really need a lot of action, but I don't think this is the game for you if that's the case. I felt like it was fun enough without being insanely overly hard, because these type of games where you have to manage guys and make sure you're sending the right things, you can get overwhelmed quickly, and it could become very unfun. It never was. It was so enjoyable, but again, like I said, the hacking and a couple of the elements of it can be repetitive, and I could see how that would be, especially considering it is like a, you know, 8-hour game or whatever the case would be. And if you do that in every single chapter and you're doing kind of the same action, some stuff to some people might get repetitive, and who knows, by the second or even third run you might be a little bit over it. So even though there's replay value, you might end up saying like, okay, but I've seen this already. And if they don't change gameplay, like, you know what I mean, if like the main story relatively stays the same based on decision and only a few things change, obviously major decisions are going to make changes, but overall I don't think it's going to be a massive hindrance no matter what you do, you know what I mean? So some could argue that you know, every replay might be a little repetitive because you might have seen this scene already or whatever, you know, even though you've made a different change, you might have certain scenes remain exactly the same, or they have to be the same, you know what I mean? So there is that. So I can understand it from that perspective, why some people might not be super interested, but that's about all I have to say about it. And I'm gonna go ahead and summarize this game in a nutshell. So basically, absolutely phenomenal writing, interesting story, interesting characters, fun combination of gameplay that you don't think would work but works quite well and is quite seamless. I never felt once that it was ever not fun to me. And obviously great story, great storytelling. The jokes were good. The characters, like I said, were interesting. I want to know more about it. I feel like this is one of those franchises that, or sorry, this games that could turn into a franchise, because the lore is there and it's interesting enough to follow. You want to know more. You want to see where else they can go with it. And again, it's just an overall great experience, relatively inexpensive game, good bang for your buck, lots of replay value. But at the same time, some people might find it a bit repetitive with the more runs you do, especially with like the hacking mechanic or the city mechanics or the dispatch mechanic of it. Some people might find it gets repetitive as you run through game after each run of the game. So with that being said, I'm ready to give my score, and I am very pleased at this one. Like I said, it was very close to being a perfect game, but it is not. Just based on that, you know, I can understand that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it. But I'm going to go ahead and give this game a very, very well-deserved and very high score of a 9.5. It is almost there. In my head, I wanted to give it a 10, but I knew that this hacking mechanic, I was doing it a couple times, and I remember doing it back to back, and I did have a thought. I'm like, you know what? This is a little, it's not pissing me off or anything. It's not like it's super difficult, but it does kind of almost forcibly make the game go longer in certain areas. And even though it's not that difficult per se, and it's not like it's going to stop it per se, like, you know, make you like quit the game, be like, oh, this is terrible. Again, if you do it constantly over and over and over again, and you make multiple runs, you're going to do it over and over and over again. I could see that being a little bit, you might end up getting a little bit bored as you go. You know what I mean? That's my only worry, is that there's only so many times you can do it and then do the exact same action over and over. So I think if they added a bit more variety to their mini games like that, like a few more mini games, not just that, I think it would have been perfect, but it's just not enough variety in there, which is going to hinder it. So 9.5 for me. Absolutely love this game, and I am debating on doing another run. We'll see how things go, you know, make some alternate decisions. I'm not 100% sure yet. I don't want to go anywhere and just say anything exactly, but I definitely enjoyed it, and it's possible I might do another run, try and go for some alternate choices, but we'll see where the schedule goes and if I have enough time to do so. But either way, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts below, subscribe if you're new, and turn on those post notifications with the bell icon so you don't miss anything I put out here on the channel. Be sure to like, follow my socials, Facebook, X, Instagram, Snapchat, Discord. Those are linked in the description. If you want to get yourself a shirt or hoodie of mine, there's a link in the description. Also, an embedded feature right below the stream that shows a preview of some items you can get. Ultimately, just go to the website for the full range of products and customization options, which I did add 2 new designs, so head on over there if you want to check those out. Fresh new designs, the first shirt designs I've uploaded in a long time, so be sure to check those out. Be sure to check out be sure to check out the sponsors and all their goodies as well. DX Racer, Bones Coffee, The Ridge Wallet, Mad Rabbit Tattoo. I use their products daily. Check them out for yourselves with the links in the description.